All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for the next edition of Moving Beyond the Coronavirus Economy. And one of the things that always seems to come up to talk about is this idea of manuals, playbooks, franchise manuals, processes, documentation, procedures. And so, as this is always a topic of conversation, and especially as it pertains to franchising, this is something that we have been looking to say, how can we improve this process of going through the documentation, documenting, putting things together. And in the course of doing so, I was connected with Gary, who's the founder and CEO of Whale, and I'll let him do a more formal introduction here soon, but he's going to talk about where things are moving in the process and manual space, and it's moving online and digital in a really unique way. And he's an expert at this, so you're going to get a lot out of it. So, Gary, in lieu of me mispronouncing your last name, I will leave that to you to say correctly. And I'd like to turn things over and have you give us a little background and get us going today.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Tom. And well, my parents, for some reason, really enjoyed having a first name, which is very difficult to pronounce in my native tongue, which is Dutch, but is very easy to use in English. So Gary, and then my last name is pronounced Vanbutsele, and there's just not a good way to pronounce it in English. So we'll just skip right ahead at that part. But thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm Gary. I'm the CEO of Whale. Whale is a company that has been around for 3 years now, and we help companies improve on process documentation, and at least an equal important part on the training aspect of documentation, because without having the training part, well, documentation doesn't have a lot of purpose. So Whale is the knowledge and training platform for small and medium-sized enterprises, and we focus on helping companies systemize their business. And when we talk about systemizing, we quickly think about the franchising concept, right? We think about making something that is reproducible, something that you can repeat on and on again into infinity. And so the idea of Whale started a couple of years ago when I was running my first company, which was an IT services firm. We were doing well, we were growing, but we did feel that at a certain point, we did hit a ceiling. Things got away from us. We felt we were making more mistakes. Hiring and onboarding took a lot of time. And so we turned to what a lot of companies turn to, and that is documenting your processes, procedures, put them in a drive somewhere, in a Google Drive, or I see still a lot of companies just put them in physical binders and then hope that everyone would reference them and that we could use that to train new people. The reality set in that it just didn't happen. I kind of joke, but I do believe that process documents go to a drive to die. That's what they do. You document them, you store them somewhere, and nobody looks at them. And either they're catching dust in a drawer somewhere, or they're catching virtual dusts in a virtual drawer. So that's kind of what we wanted to focus on. And so even though we're very active in different industries, the franchise industry is definitely one of those that really grasps the value of having good playbooks, having good manuals, having a good operational manual to make sure that you can repeat success across your different channels. And so I was curious, Tom, from your perspective as an expert within the industry, what would you say is the most important benefit of having a good franchise manual?
For me, I would say, and just kind of looking at this, the fundamental core purpose is really for training and support and providing those processes for a franchisee to learn and execute, and then for you have onboarding there for their franchise, for the employees of the franchisee to be able to implement the systems and have access to whatever they would need to implement.
Yeah.
So to me, that's probably number one. Certainly, look, reducing liability is critical to protect the franchisor from a mishap at a franchisee, and using it in the sales process is important as well. It's a nice sales tool to help. But the core of it is like, what you started getting into earlier. I think that training, support, and using that regularly in day-to-day operations for consistency, because you want that consistency in the system.
Exactly. And I think that in the end, it kind of boils down to making sure that you can offer a consistent experience to your customer as a franchisee that is of a high quality. And just yesterday, a big franchise set up shop in my hometown, and it's a pizza place. I will not tell you which brand it is, but I was intrigued because we're in a small town. So I ordered online, and I think it's the first week that they've opened, and I ordered online. I went through the process of getting my order, and I could track my order, right? And so 40 minutes passed, still didn't get my pizza, and I got hungry. And so I decided to call. Ask, hey, I've been waiting 40 minutes. Where are you at? I'm hungry. What's the status? And this woman picked up, and I could hear she was not happy. I could hear a lot of noise in the background. I could hear a lot of different phone calls coming in. And she answered, yeah, it's super busy. A lot of people are calling. We were having so many orders coming in, we cannot follow. And I was like, I understand, that's fine, but can you give me at least an indication of when I can expect my pizza? And she said, oh, I can see you on the board right now. That means that they are preparing your order and they are going to deliver it. And so in the end, it took another hour and 15 minutes before the pizza came. And so I was talking to my wife, and I was like, don't they have a playbook on how to handle a big order income, how to handle people calling? And I just felt they were not well prepared. They were not trained well on how to handle that situation. And so my customer experience was not great. It's this big brand that everybody knows. And I was like, how is it possible that they have not got this figured out? And so my conclusion, obviously, because I'm in this space, is that they didn't have good training. They didn't have a manual on how to handle that situation. So for me, in the end, it's about delivering a good, consistent customer experience. And yesterday was just a good example of where it can fail. And so there's so much things that can be put into a franchise manual, a playbook, a business playbook, whatever you want to call it. But I agree, Tom, that it's about making sure that you're training your staff well enough so they can handle all those different situations. Are there, in your opinion, some things that are more important than others when you're just starting off with building your franchise manual or playbook? What is the first thing you advise companies to document?
Yeah. So when we build out manuals for our clients, we have some standard documentation that we're going to include that is franchise specific, that we know they're going to need in there. Some just general best practices, guidelines, some liability limiters for the franchise and for the franchisee. And then beyond that, you had mentioned EOS. We have always used this general practice for documenting, but the entrepreneur operating system kind of helped just give a name and define it for us, which has been great. So it doesn't matter to me if it's EOS that we use or whatever. It's a great system. So, but it's documenting those core 20% of your processes or procedures or things that you do that generate 80% of your revenue or activity. So whatever, though, that's where we like to focus. Those are the single most important things. Otherwise, especially for a new franchisor, you get overwhelmed because you can start going down this. And I think that's part of the fear that I see in people who start going down this manual process. They say, oh my goodness, I have to document everything. And they think there's some government agency now. They're like some, a military organization, documenting every single little fine detail. And to me, that's overkill for the stage that they are in. At some point they might be there, but not at this juncture.
I totally agree. I've seen manuals of over 800 pages, and I'm like, who reads this? There is not literally one person that is going to go through 800 pages. And that's definitely what we advise our customers to do as well, is keep it short, keep it simple, keep it to the point. You don't need to spell everything out. You're hiring people that will figure it out, but you need to offer them a framework in which they can do their jobs well. And so it's a big fear we encounter as well, where they say, oh, but if I'm embarking on this documentation journey, it's going to take me so much time to get a return on investment. And the opposite is actually true. Just starting it will yields a win back almost immediately, because you'll be able to delegate much easier. You'll be able to have people not ask the same questions over and over again. And this funny thing happens as well when you start documenting. As long as it's in your head, it remains this abstract process. It's hard to imagine it. And once you write it down, it becomes much clearer. You get a different perspective on how the process looks like. And a lot of companies come back to me and they said, Gary, I started documenting. And once it was written out, I figured out this is not the right process. I need to improve on this. This doesn't feel right. And just having it written down helps with so many things. And so one aspect that that you talked about in the beginning is, where do franchise manuals go? What is the current look and feel of a manual? I was wondering, with the franchisors and franchisees that you work with, Tom, what is the type of manual you're still seeing the most from all of them right here?
Yeah, I would say the most common today is a pretty good mix between really the first three, binders, PDF files, and usually the PDF files are some of them that they are the franchisor is less restrictive on, will be emailed. Mm-hmm. But the majority end up in some kind of a cloud drive. They'll end up in a Dropbox or a Google Drive or OneDrive, or whichever one they're using, and they'll share through that. So those tend to be the most common. So that's the software for operation manuals. It's I'm just starting to see that really in the last year and a half, almost around the time that we started talking, where I started seeing a client here or there have something like that.
Exactly. That's what we still see as well. The majority these days, they have a virtual drawer in which they store things, so a cloud drive. The reality is, as I mentioned earlier, is that the same thing happens. You put a lot of effort in documentation, and you see that nobody is referencing them and nobody's reading them. And when they're in that situation where they're not sure on what to do, nobody wants to go through 7 subfolders to find a document with a specific section on, hey, this is what I need. They rather wing it. They rather ask a colleague. And that's when you're losing time, you're acting very inefficiently, or you're making mistakes. So obviously, that's where a solution like Whale comes in. And so a couple of benefits that we see just from digitalizing your franchise manuals is, first of all, everything is in one place. It's easy, accessible, because everyone knows that's where I need to be. It's very easy to manage, and that's a big aspect of it all as well. As I mentioned, just documenting it helps you improve on processes. So the process today may not be the same process in 6 months. Maybe you're adjusting, you're improving, and so you need an easy and efficient way to manage those changes. And at the same time, as you onboard and train people, those changes people need to be retrained on those changes as well. So you really need a closed loop in where you can centralize, manage, train, and onboard, and just make sure it remains up to date at all times. Because while putting a lot of effort in it, and then after a year, realize that everything has gone stale and that it's just not relevant anymore, it's just a big waste of time. So there's so many benefits of digitalizing it that I would not suggest you to do anything other than looking in that direction. And so there's a couple of things that we specifically like to help with. First of all, it's by offering a couple of templates, working with industry experts like yourself on adding value with frameworks, with templates, and just helping you get this off the ground. The hardest thing is to get started. Once you're getting started, you'll see how easy it is, and you'll see the return on investment very quickly. So we really want to help you with getting started. We help you with keeping that knowledge up to date. We've got systems in place where you can specify, hey, in this example, John might be the responsible one for the back of the house processes. And so John will be asked to review these procedures every 6 months. So the system tells John, hey, it's been 6 months since we last updated this section. Maybe it's time to review it to make sure that everyone has an up-to-date version, and you can send those updates out very easily from within the system. You can reach your teams through a smartphone, through their computer, through whatever way people have close at hand. So obviously, the major benefits about onboarding and training. It's about making sure that once you build out a franchise, that whoever you decide to employ, they understand this is how we run things. This is how we do things. We do it in a consistent manner, and we make sure it's scalable. And so just having one place where you can centralize, manage, and send out these training manuals, as we call them, is just easy to do. And finally, as I mentioned, whatever type of franchisee you are, will give you all of the mediums in which you can access that information. And so a lot of it has to do with mobile devices these days. And we've embedded some cool features like QR codes, being able to put QR codes, for example, in specific locations and have people just grab their smartphone, scan that QR code, and get the right manual that is relevant, for example, for that specific machine. So we really try to close the gap between finding the right information, being trained on the right stuff, and executing on it. And so in a nutshell, that's what Whale helps with. It helps you with centralizing, it helps you with managing, it helps you with training, and it helps you create a consistent employee experience.
So Gary, the example you just gave of using QR codes is really, that's really, to me, really fantastic. So I'm thinking if I'm, let's just say a restaurant, and I've got several pieces of equipment and machines, or, maybe over by the sink, you could have a QR code that says, here's how we wash the dishes, or here's how it's supposed to be cleaned, or you could have the QR code that they just scan real quick, and then it's going to pull up on their phone just that specific portion. So how does that work?
Exactly. So that's one of the major things that we felt that other solutions weren't thinking about. So there's this saying, because you mentioned EOS, there's this saying in EOS that you need to hear the same thing 7 times before you're hearing it for the first time, which means that you need to be hearing the same process, the same procedure at least 7 times before it sinks in, because the human mind is just not built to capture a lot of information and retain all that information at once. So you need a repeatable way on which you can train and have information referenced. And the key is to have it as easy as possible for your teams. And so one of the things with the QR code is we just didn't want yet another tool where all this information lives in a silo, where people need to go to, they need to serve to it, they need to find it, they need to waste time looking for what they need. And so the QR code just allows you to have specific sections in your operational manual, as you mentioned, maybe on how to clean the oven when you're done in the day. Have a QR code on the oven, scan it, and it will have that manual appear in whatever way you've documented. That might be video instructions. It can be just written out information. It can be images. We offer a whole set of tools on how to create documentation, and this at the same time allows you to create manuals that are a bit more engaging. Because let's be honest, documentation is not the sexiest thing in the world. It's not what you wake up and you're like, yeah, I'm excited, I'm going to create documentation and training manuals. But with Whale, you get all of these tools. You can even embed GIFs if you want to make it a little bit more fun. And just having stuff like QR codes creates what we call just-in-time training, making sure that where you are, what you're doing, and the manual you're receiving is relevant to each other.
I love that concept of just-in-time training. Or is that, I don't know if you want to go through other things here, but I'd love this concept of just-in-time training. Makes a ton of sense. So how would that work for just if for an average employee at a business? What does that mean to you?
For me, it means not overwhelming someone with like 100 topics in the first couple of days. Because again, research has shown that when you train someone, within the 2 days, people forget about 70% of what they've been trained on in those first 2 days. So that's a major drop off. So you need a consistent but also scalable way to make sure that people are being referenced to that information over and over again, at least 7 times or even more, or maybe a little bit less. And just-in-time training has a lot to do with sharing small pieces of the training content, but have it dispersed throughout time and at relevant intervals. Have it pinned down to physical locations, having it pinned down to what you're doing at that specific moment. Because another aspect of Whale is, let's say that you're also in charge of doing the accounting for your shop. And so maybe you're using a piece of software to handle accounting. What Whale does, it embeds into the systems and applications you already use through what we call a Chrome plugin, so a web plugin. And what it does is it is looking at what you're using at that specific time. So maybe your accounting software, it's looking at what are you doing in your accounting software. Maybe you're adding your inventory or something like that. And so based on those two variables, it's going to connect you with the right piece of information that you've created in your operation manual. So again, it's about just in time. What do you need at this specific moment, and Whale delivering it through different types of technologies, QR being one, having the plugin being another, and having the web application being the third one.
Yeah, see, I think that's a really significant difference, because in what you're doing versus just kind of a classic manual, not only just ease of access, but the convenience. And when I need it, it's you're at this piece of equipment or whatever you're working on. I need to know how to work this right now. This is the only thing I'm doing. And what you said before, the likely probability is that someone's going to, instead of going to find the manual, right? They're not going to go look in a manual or even pull up some shared drive and then search for printer or this or that. And they're not going to find the right thing. It's going to take them a half hour. They're not going to figure it out. They're going to get frustrated after 10 or 15 minutes. Then they're just going to go ask someone they work with or call someone. How do I do this? How do I do this? And now you have two people working on solving a problem, and potentially multiple if that person they called doesn't answer or doesn't know, and it just keeps going down. So I think it's really valuable to say, to provide, you can teach your people how to use these QR codes, use the system through the plugins to say, when you are at this moment, here are all the things you need to know right now. I think it's brilliant.
And it relates back to what I was saying in the beginning, that a lot of people tell me, Gary, this is great, and I definitely see the benefit of this, but I don't have time to document. And the funny thing is, and the ironic part about it is, as soon as you start documenting and using a system like Whale, you're actually winning back time, because it's the thing that wastes a lot of time, and that's coming from personal experience as well. Within my first company, at a certain point, I felt like all I was doing is putting out fires, because I was the only one who knew how to do stuff. It was all in my head. I was not doing a good job of sharing how to do things within my company. That all I did was put out fires, answer the same questions over and over again. It's very frustrating. It eats up all of this time that you're not spending on initiatives that grow your business, that I felt like there needs to be a better solution. And so once we started documenting, once we made sure that all this information is as accessible as possible, I gained so much more time. I got to spend more time with my family. I got to spend more time on things that give me energy as an entrepreneur and business owner. And overall, the business just fared much better with me not handling every single situation. So that's kind of the bigger picture we try to send out, and yeah, that's hopefully what people get from this.
Great. Well, and Gary, are you at the end of the presentation here? Do you have a couple more slides you wanted to go through?
No, that was the last slide.
Great. Well, what I was hoping, I'd love for you to, if I'd love for you to share if someone's interested in this, what would the next step be for them to start learning more, figuring this out, and how it could work for their business?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that you can do. Either head to our website, which is usewhale.io. And so there's two options there. Either you go through a free trial, you can experience everything that Whale has to offer on your own for at least 14 days. You can even extend it up to 21 days, so you can start playing around with it and see what it could mean for your business. Alternatively, you can book a demo with either me or one of my colleagues, and we'll give you a walkthrough of all of the things that we feel might be valuable to you as for your business. So we tend to see, especially if you're still in the exploration phase, if you're just thinking about documentation, I would advise you to book a meeting. Because we'll tell you things that you might not find in those first 14 days, or you might not see because you still need to put some work in. But we'll give you the bigger picture. We'll show you what you'll end up with if you spend a little bit of time within Whale. So both options are on the website. You can just pick one of the two buttons. Yeah, I think that would be the thing to do if you wanted more information.
Well, Gary, this is amazing. And I love what you're doing and the direction you're going. I mean, that's part of the reason we wanted to have you here, and why we like working with you and exploring this, as this trend is coming. It's not going to be a trend after a while. It's just going to be the way that things are done. And so I appreciate what you're doing and, you know, the value that this adds to your clients. And from a franchise perspective and what we're doing with our clients, this is the next wave. And so we want to make sure our clients and folks out there are seeing what's available, using it, and starting to integrate and see how this can fit in with their business. And, you know, I think it's easier when you are smaller to implement this. So a lot of our clients are just starting. They're small businesses. Maybe they haven't franchised yet, or they're just getting into franchising. Maybe they sold a few. It's a lot easier to integrate this today when you're smaller than when you have 100 locations or, 200 or 1,000 locations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The sooner you begin, the sooner you'll start getting a return, and the easier it becomes to scale your franchise. So I definitely agree. The sooner the better.
Great. Well, and what is your website again for someone to go to the website? What's the best way to get there?
So either I'm not sure if you type in whale, if we're the top hits, to be honest, in Google. What I can do is I can share you the website that you can share on your platforms, but it's use whale, so like use it .io. Just type it in your browser. That's the easiest way to get there. Look me up on LinkedIn. There's links to the website there as well. And just generally typing in whale knowledge and training software will get you there as well. So just look us up and you'll find us. Yeah, here it is. That's where you want to go. And so there's the two options there. Just put in your work email and that gets you started within like 2 minutes, or the smaller button, book a live demo. And chances are that'll be me walking you through the platform.
Great. Great. Well, thank you so much. Again, it's usewhale.io, usewhale.io. Here's just a screenshot or the Live's website, actually, for you to take a look at it. And you can get started with a free trial. If you just want to get started, you just click that button too. But Gary and his team are doing great work. And Gary, I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up the webinar?
No, I just wanted to thank you again for the opportunity. I always love having these types of conversations with people that really are within that industry, and just partnering up, I think, with industry experts and us having this tool that might help you is just a multiplier for companies to work with, both of them. So I really enjoyed this, Tom, and thanks again for having me.
Well, thank you, Gary. I'm so grateful for you to be here and share what you're doing with our audience and our team. So thank you. Everyone, have a great weekend. Happy Easter. I forgot to say that. It's Good Friday today. So happy Easter to everyone who's tuning in and celebrating. And we should have this up and live as available for just viewing here by Monday, Tuesday at the latest. But we'll have this up in the next few days, available on our YouTube channel for anyone who wants to watch a replay or share it with someone they think could benefit. So, Gary, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye, Tom.
Bye.